A young man once walked into a village and challenged the most feared samurai in all of Japan to a fight. The samurai said nothing. The young man stepped closer. He insulted the samurai's honor. He insulted his family. He insulted everything the samurai had ever built or stood for. The samurai said nothing. The crowd around them grew tense. They waited for the explosion. They waited for the blade. They waited for the reaction that everyone in that situation would have given. The samurai turned and walked away. The young man stood alone in the middle of the village, his aggression hanging in the air with nothing to land on, his carefully constructed provocation completely wasted, his psychological strategy destroyed not by a counterattack, but by something far more devastating: absolute stillness. Later, a student asked the samurai why he did not fight. The samurai said, "A man who cannot be provoked cannot be defeated." Think about that for a moment. Not the strongest warrior wins. Not the most skilled, not the most righteous, the one who cannot be provoked. Because the moment you react, you have already handed your enemy the most powerful weapon they will ever use against you: your own emotions. 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli watched this exact dynamic destroy powerful men in the most dangerous political environment in human history. And what he documented was not a philosophy of patience or virtue. It was the cold surgical truth about how power is lost. Not through defeat, not through weakness, not through lack of talent or resources, but through a single unguarded reaction at the wrong moment in front of the wrong person. Today, we are going to break that pattern permanently. Welcome back to Dark Psychology of Life, the channel that does not sugarcoat human nature, does not sell you false hope, and does not give you crumbs. Today, we are going somewhere most content creators are too afraid to go. We're going to break down the exact psychological framework that makes certain people completely untouchable, not invincible, not perfect, untouchable. People who cannot be provoked, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be controlled by the reactions they refuse to give. Stay with me, because what comes next will permanently change how you move through every room you walk into. Deep inside your skull sits a structure called the amygdala. It is ancient, it is fast, and it is catastrophically easy to weaponize against you. The moment someone disrespects you, your amygdala fires before your conscious mind even knows what happened. In less than a quarter of a second, your body floods with adrenaline. Your rational thinking shuts down. Your vision narrows. And suddenly the most intelligent version of you has been replaced by the most primitive version of you. Psychologist Daniel Goleman called this the amygdala hijack. And here's the brutal reality. Every single person who has ever successfully manipulated you, provoked you, or destabilized you has been exploiting this exact biological mechanism, not because they are smarter than you, but because they understood that your reactions are the door into your mind. And that door has been wide open. Machiavelli watched this destroy powerful men in real time. He watched brilliant men with armies and resources and influence collapse entirely because they could not control what happened on their faces when they were provoked. And he wrote in The Prince, "A ruler must learn to master the art of simulation and dissimulation, to project what serves you, to conceal what exposes you, not as dishonesty, but as the highest form of strategic self-mastery." Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, described this perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, that tiny, almost invisible gap between what happens to you and how you respond to it, that is where untouchable people live permanently. The next time someone throws the verbal blade at you, do not counterattack. Do not tighten your jaw. Do not let even a flicker of emotion cross your face. Go completely still. Let silence open up between you like a vast dark ocean. They expected a defensive counterpunch. They built their entire psychological strategy around getting one. When they receive absolute stillness, instead the attack bounces back. The psychological gravity reverses. They begin to spiral. In that moment, without saying a single word, you have already won. Just like the samurai. Reacting is only half of the trap. The other half is far more seductive, far more disguised, and for most people far more destructive. Because this trap does not feel like weakness when you are inside it. It feels like honesty. It feels like maturity. It feels like being a good communicator. It is called over-explanation, and it is slowly bleeding you dry. When you explain your decisions to people who never asked for an explanation, you are picking up a gavel. handing it to another person, and quietly asking them to judge whether your reasoning is good enough. You are telling them without ever saying it directly that your own internal authority is insufficient. And the moment you communicate that you have handed them power over you that they did not have before you open your mouth. Picture this. A man is offered a project he does not want to take. He says, I really appreciate the opportunity, but I just have so much on my plate right now, and I genuinely don't think I could get the attention it deserves. Every single sentence he just spoke is a negotiating chip he handed to the other person. Too busy? They will move the deadline. Cannot give full attention? They will reduce the scope. But watch what happens when the same man simply says, I am not available for this. Full stop. Nothing to negotiate. Nothing to dismantle. A smooth vertical wall with no handholds, no cracks, no surface area for manipulation. The boundary does not need to be explained. It simply needs to exist. Machiavelli studied Cesare Borgia, the most feared strategic mind of the Renaissance, and observed that Borgia's greatest weapon was never his armies. It was his complete refusal to make his reasoning visible. His enemies could never predict his next move. Even those who served him most loyally lived in a permanent state of productive uncertainty. Because you cannot plot against a mind you cannot read. You cannot negotiate against a wall that gives you nothing to push against. Every reason you give is a new opening for attack. Every explanation you offer is a new weapon you are placing in the hands of people who may use it against you. Your boundaries do not need a defense attorney. Your decisions do not need a jury. They simply need to be made and executed with the cold, absolute authority of someone who has never once questioned their own right to make them. Who have you been explaining yourself to? And what has it actually cost you? Most people are emotional vending machines. Insert a compliment, receive immediate warmth. Insert doubt, receive visible anxiety. Insert subtle insult, receive defensive anger. Completely predictable. And because they are predictable, they are controllable. But what happens when you remove the predictability entirely? Researchers call this strategic ambiguity, the deliberate disciplined maintenance of psychological unreadability as a mechanism of power. Studies consistently find that leaders perceived as emotionally opaque are rated as more authoritative, more competent, and more psychologically commanding than those whose inner states are easily visible, not because they are cold or unfeeling, but because their inner world is inaccessible. And inaccessibility in psychology of power is terrifying. When you walk into a room after a catastrophic setback with no visible wound, no desperate need to explain what happened, just cold, focused forward momentum. Something happens in the people watching you that goes beyond admiration. It is closer to fear, because the human brain cannot tolerate an information vacuum. When your reactions and motivations are unavailable, the minds around you begin to fill that vacuum with projection. They assume you know something they do not. They assume you have already calculated 10 moves ahead. They assume your silence is strategy, your stillness is power, your composure is the calm of someone who has already won. And here is the extraordinary paradox at the center of all of this. Simply by saying nothing and showing nothing, you made every single one of those assumptions functionally true. Because while everyone around you is drowning in speculation about what you're thinking, you are the only person in the room thinking with complete undistorted clarity. As Machiavelli wrote in the Discourses, nothing gives a leader more authority than the display of total calmness in the midst of the storm. Before we go into the 3 laws, drop this in the comment section right now. I am untouchable. Type that right now. Let me see who in this audience is ready to become the most dangerous version of themselves. What I am about to give you are not tips. They are not suggestions. They are 3 laws forged from 5 centuries of Machiavellian strategy and backed by modern psychological science that will fundamentally rewire the way you move through the world. Most people will hear these and nod. A rare few will actually apply them. And those few will never be the same again. Law 1. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. Anxious people speak fast. Approval seekers fill every pause with nervous elaboration. People afraid of their own authority crowd their sentences with qualifiers and apologies. Research shows that slow, deliberate speech is consistently associated with higher perceived status, confidence, and authority. When you feel the urge to fill silence, that urge is not communication. It is anxiety leaking out through your mouth. Speak your point. Stop. Let the silence in the room like a physical weight. Because the person who can sit inside silence without flinching is always the most powerful person in the room. Law 2. Refuse the ring. When someone attempts to bait you into an emotional reaction, they have built a psychological ring, and sent you an engraved invitation to step inside it. Do not step inside. Acknowledge their statement without feeding it. Simply say, "That is an interesting perspective." Then return to your objective without a single visible ripple of emotion. You did not agree. You did not argue. You simply declined to fight on terrain someone else chose for you. That refusal is not passivity. It is the most aggressive thing you can do to someone who came prepared for your reaction. Law 3. Your attention is the most expensive thing you own. Neuroscientist Gloria Mark found that it takes an average of 23 minutes for the human brain to return to deep focused thinking after a single interruption. Every provocative comment, every passive-aggressive message, every unsolicited critique thrown in your direction is not just an emotional attack. It is a calculated theft of your most valuable cognitive resource. The untouchable individual treats their attention like a high-security vault. Not everything gets access. Not every bid gets honored. And nothing gets a reaction. It was not worth receiving. When something does not serve your growth or your psychological sovereignty, you do not engage. You do not explain why you are not engaging. You simply do not engage. That is not coldness. That is the most ruthless form of self-respect. The samurai did not win that day by being stronger. He did not win by being faster or more skilled or more righteous. He won because he understood something that most people spend their entire lives refusing to learn. The person who controls their reactions controls the entire interaction. The person who refuses to explain themselves controls the entire narrative. And the person who becomes completely unreadable controls a room without ever raising their voice or drawing their blade. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are not here to justify your existence to people who lack the perception to appreciate it. You are here to become so psychologically fortified, so deeply rooted in your own authority, that the provocations and psychological games of this world simply pass through you without finding anything to grip. Machiavelli did not write for the comfortable. He wrote for those rare, dangerous individuals who were willing to look at power without flinching, to understand it without apology, and to wield it without explanation. The samurai walked away that day without a scratch, not because nobody came for him, but because there was nothing to hit. Become that. If this video reached something inside you that most content never touches, subscribe to Dark Psychology of Life. And drop this in the comment section right now before you close this video. I fear nothing. Let the world see who you are becoming. New content drops every week. Stay sharp. Stay dangerous. Stay silent.